Welcome to House Calls, the podcast where health meets humor. With over 20 years of experience as an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine physician, Dr. Hugh House, also known as Ty, is your go-to expert for healing chronic pain through diet and lifestyle. He's on a mission to help you live your best pain-free life. And then there's Matthew Waldron, a rugged indoorsman and Ty's friend for over 4 decades. Matt's role, to keep Dr. House in check. Tune into House Calls with Dr. House and Matt, where every episode is packed with expert advice, laughter, and practical tips to help you feel great. Let's get started.
Everybody, welcome to House Calls, the podcast. My name is Matthew Waldron, your co-host, and today is a big day for me because Ty is not here, which means I'll actually be able to get a word in. The reason I am here is because I'm going to give you a quick introduction into today's episode with Jack Fracyon. Jack is a senior and a captain, as well as a starting goalie on the Penn State men's lacrosse team. Ty and I have known Jack for a while. I've always known of Jack's dedication to his craft, but this conversation was pretty enlightening to me to understand how intelligent and articulate Jack is, and talks about the importance of teamwork, family, and nutrition. All things that we like to talk about here on the podcast. So enjoy. Yeah, Jack, stretch it out. You ready?
All right, everybody. So here goes. This is our second podcast of 2025. I'm super excited about it because we're going to be talking a little bit about my favorite sport, which is lacrosse. My co-host is Matt Waldron. He's kind of famous for 3 things with lacrosse. The first one is he has recently become the voice of Sherwood, announcing our cornrows lacrosse game. Second, he's famous because he is the brother of Pete, number 19, first shots always high left, Waldron. And I'm pretty sure he stole my 1986 Heroes All-Stars lacrosse jersey that I've been missing. It was probably my favorite thing when I was a kid. And our guest tonight is Jack Fracyon, the goalie of the Cornrows married lacrosse team. Even though he's single, he's one of my favorite teammates, and he is so into that game. He spends most of his off season at Penn State University practicing lacrosse, playing for the Penn State team, where he's an All-American and last year was a Thornton Award finalist.
That's right. All the training's actually dedicated strictly and specifically to that game.
So
we were putting in the zone next year too to better counter our abilities for the game. So
the one comment was 2 years ago. I think some of our younger defensemen who were under 30, who actually were married, but they were away at a wedding, and you were stuck with not 40-year-olds, you were stuck with 50-year-olds, and we kind of got shelled. And some people were like, Jack's probably okay with it. And I was like, he's pretty competitive. I don't think he's okay with it. And sure enough, I woke up the next morning at 7:00 with a text from you. We're going zone next year.
It's okay though. It's okay because now we got a whole year of practice under our belts. Because I know you've been training as much as I have, so I'm not worried about it.
Well, that was 2 years ago. Last year we dominated.
You're right.
We got some of those young defensemen back who had some pretty nice college careers themselves. But to move on, let's go over the correct pronunciation of your name.
It's Jack. J-A, Jack, right?
That's funny. Yeah, I've 100 different announcers, 100 different pronunciations. We got Jack Fracyon, the Y-O-N sounded Y-I-N. You can just call me Jack though, but yeah, Fracyon.
So I have been harassing your dad, saying I text him during games, especially it's better now when you're on the big networks, but when you're on some of the games at the beginning of the season, or when you were a freshman and a sophomore, and they would butcher your name 20 different times, and I would like, just call him Jack Frack. It's fine. Call him Jack Frack. It works.
Yeah.
Can we go back? Who is Jack Frack, if I may call you Frack? Who is Jack's dad?
I'm surprised that, he's pretty quiet guy, so that would make sense that you wouldn't know who he is.
He is the Persian Panther, the best looking man in college lacrosse.
Whoa. I thought that guy was just around to run cornrows and have kids sit on his lap at the holiday seasons. That's not his only role?
No, he's got all
sorts
of
roles. Okay, all right. This is educational already. This is great. All right.
So let's get down to business. So Jack and I were together on New Year's Eve before they ditched me and went out for younger people. But we were doing a little football trivia, and we mentioned Derrick Henry. And you mentioned something, Jack. We were talking about how many years we thought he had left. And you were like, he takes such good care of his body that you thought he had a couple more years left. I think you said after this year, he's got 2 more good years left.
That's right. Yep.
At the college level, so at the college lacrosse level, are you guys paying attention to nutrition?
In an incredible amount, a lot more than you ever be able to see from an outside view. I know you played, but I'm sure obviously it's different now. I guess I can go into a quick story. TJ Malone, who was our best player for my whole time here, this is his first year not here. He double hip surgery. I believe he had double labrum surgery, and he had surgery on his groin, and he missed 2.5 years of college lacrosse, and he was never supposed to come back. He came back in about 2 years ago after not playing for that long, and he tore it up, just completely dominated the game. He was a Tour-a-thon finalist. He was Rookie of the Year this year in the PLL, and he every single day would go to bed and wake up at the same exact time. He would go into the training room and do stretches with our trainer. He had the football team's physical therapist would come in, work him out, and he was just always staying nimble. And I think that just has so much to do with how much he took care of his body, directly correlated to how much he continued to keep playing.
Did that resonate with the rest of the team? Did other guys kind of, lead that for that example and implement that in their own?
Definitely, it's a lead by example thing. He was a captain too, and you saw so many people, not just on the field, working off of him because obviously he's our star attackman, or he was our star attackman. He was getting freshmen in to come in the morning with him, to work out with him. People, it's actually funny, the lack of injuries we saw in that offseason where he came back compared to the year this year afterwards, where it's crazy just seeing how many people he was able to bring along with him.
How about
That's
any
awesome.
nutrition stuff? Like, do you guys have like pregame meals, or do you eat together as a team? Like, do the coaches ever talk about, hey, don't load up on junk food the day before a game, anything like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. And we have a nutritionist on our staff. His name is Nick. They put in a whole station in our lounge with just a lot of good carb foods, and we have jerky, we have those apple like the applesauce things, we have smoothie station. It's basically, and another big part about it is hydration alongside of the nutrition. I never realized how, I guess that's a terrible thing to say, but I never realized how important it was to drink so much water when you're exerting so much energy, especially with the amount of hours we work in. So along with the
So you guys
nutrition,
just straight water?
I'm actually having some water now.
there you go.
Ranch
Now, so
water
you're ready
does
to
not
go.
count. Ranch water does not count.
This is my own personalized from Team Dad.
So wait a second. Hey, Jack, so when you guys just water, or are you guys doing electrolytes in there? I mean, what do you guys hydrate?
It varies for different people. They have these Gatorade salt packet things that they actually just made like 2 years ago. Right before I go out to practice, especially if I had a long day, like this past semester, I'd have 3 classes in one day. And so I'd be walking all through campus, and then about like 15 minutes before the meeting, I would show up. So I would be pretty exhausted, and that just helped me get more hydrated, and it really cleared up my mind too. And it helped me focus a lot more, especially being a goalie. It's a very mentally draining position. But then there'll be other people who are straight water. They gave us I wish I had mine out. They gave us the big Gatorade squirt ones, and everybody gets one on the team. You're supposed to have like 3 or 4 of those, 2, 3, 4 of those before you go into practice. So, it would vary by people, but hydration as a whole is definitely very key.
It's come such a long way. Matt's about to make fun of me, but in the 80s, our pregame meal, sometimes we would have pancakes with syrup, a chocolate bar at each person's desk, and then you'd have like a soda or orange juice or something. And I distinctly remember going out in that first face-off and just being exhausted and being like, I don't understand. I'm in such great shape. Why am I so exhausted? And now 30 years later with some nutritional knowledge. I'm like, because you were jacked up on sugar and then you just, you were so psyched during warmups and then you crash. So I'm glad it has changed a lot. Just a little, like in professional sports, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, the Christmas night. I don't know if you noticed this, but
I saw.
they had a great game, and the like award, like the John Madden turkey legs. Well, for
Yeah.
the Netflix thing was a big cake, and they wouldn't eat it. Like they
No
wouldn't
way.
touch the cake, and I think it's because they just do no sugar during the season.
Yeah, and I feel like in terms of sustainability, if you're gonna, especially when the camera's on, cave in for that singular moment, it's not only going against, your diet, but it's also a mental thing too. I think it's like a toughness thing, being able to withstand the pressures of food and things like that when you're doing something so important for other people. They're not just doing it for themselves; they're doing it for the Ravens and their whole team to rely on them. So I thought that was actually pretty cool to see that they wouldn't indulge in that cake.
And I also wonder if Lamar matured, because remember he used to get sick and cramp, and
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
seem to be doing that. It's like he must have matured and realized that that's not for him.
yeah. It's almost like he's playing like an MVP this year.
Yeah. Super Bowl. So the next thing is with training. How do you notice the advancement from high school to college? So training, fitness, everything for a position that's pretty unique, like goalie.
Yeah. So let me preface this by saying when I went to Bullis, which was in Potomac, so about an hour and 15 minutes away from Sherwood, and I would almost stay 4 or 5 weeks at my friend's house there because my dad didn't want me to drive on 495 at 5:30 in the morning, which I can understand now. Back then I was like, why? But now I get it. Um, I never gave the proper attention I should have to stretching and weight training. I would go out there and I would play, and then I would be exerting all these movements and stretching my body into tenuous situations, and then I would just go lay down in bed afterwards, and I would call it a day. I get to my first 2 weeks of my freshman year in college, and I just thought I was special. I was like, I don't need to do all this stuff. I'll be fine. And then we had our first 2-a-day, which was a circuit in the indoor facility, which was like pushing sleds and med ball tosses over our head, just up and down the turf. And then we had practice, and the soreness didn't hit me until the next day. And I when I tell you, I couldn't feel anything below my waist. I was terrible. I was like, I'm screwed. I have no idea.
So
And
it's you learned.
yeah, and I really did.
I mean, that's a tough way to learn, but you learn. But does that come with being in high school? I mean, why would you think about stretching and all that stuff when you can do the great things you were doing and not need it? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I just think that the amount of toll that if you're going to put so much physical toll on your body and in a sport and expect to have results, you need to put the same amount in the things that people aren't going to be seeing on game day. I do this. I do 35 minute stretching routine. Stretching I could talk about for hours, but it really changed how I'm able to play. I had a horrible back problem going into halfway through my freshman year because I wasn't taking the time to take care of my body after practice. And now I do this routine, and I do a lot of heat therapy, like on these areas where I'm putting a lot of tension. And now I'm still able to touch my toes, so it's working out pretty well.
Have you noticed a difference between having, say, an 18-year-old body when you were a freshman and being 21, 22?
100%. I'll tell you the amount I'm doing now to make sure I can practice 4 times a week and work out 3 times a week versus what I was doing when I was 18, or even like I was saying when I was in high school. It's monumentally different.
Yeah. I always wonder about that. I think people don't realize there's a huge difference between an 18-year-old body and a 22-year-old body. And where you notice it is like professional football, where these guys play 4 years of college football, they're never hurt, and then they pull a hamstring their first year in the pros, and you're like, what? How's that possible? Just you tighten up as you get older.
Yeah, and it's also a lot more mandated activity. In high school, a ton of the stuff you were, at least from my experience, a ton of the stuff you were doing was either not fully supervised or it was in some way optional. And so you could either go in there and you're giving like let's say you're tired that day, you're giving your 50% in high school because you're like, all right, I'm tired, I got practice the next day, I don't want to be sore for practice. But you get this, like for us, you get to Penn State and you're not giving 100% in the weight room. That's going to go noticed. And then you're not giving your all, so you're not going to be able to get the most out of it. So you're also just kind of giving yourself the short end of that.
How much of this is supervised versus how much, because you're an upperclassman, have you learned and now you've incorporated it? Or say you saw TJ Malone doing it and now you've incorporated it into your own program versus how much is the coaches directing it? So if you're a 17-year-old kid showing up on campus, are they on the same program you're on?
For me specifically, no, because I'm a goalie, but what the like Matt Trainer is an attackman on our team, what he's doing is just a more critique to what his body has gone through throughout his time. So he's had injuries, so there's certain things he can and there's certain things he shouldn't do and there's certain things he should be doing more of. But generally, as a freshman coming in, we're all working out at the same time, varied on classes. So we'll have 3 drift lifts. So there will be upperclassmen in there and you will be doing the same thing as them. But for me, I don't need to be bench pressing 245 pounds or I don't even know like if that's a lot or not. I think it is, but like
It is to me.
I don't need to be doing that. I need to be more worried about my my hip mobility. So I'll be doing a lot of lower body and a lot of squatting and so, but that's obviously different than a defensive midfielder who needs to be engaging in all this strenuous activity in the upper part of his body.
So that's
You're
interesting.
also doing just to clarify, sorry, Matt, you are doing 100 push-ups a day to
Yeah, that
others.
is a part of that. That is a new addition to the training. Since I saw the people at Mother's Bar, always getting it in. I was worried about Carlos and all of them that day because I think they only had about 50 or 55 going into that night. So I was wondering when they were going to get it in. I saw they did.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta have goals, and that I think that's really what it's all about. But so, Jack, when you're in there working out, are you more working out focused on being agile and ability, nimbleness, as opposed to obviously you have to have strength and because you want to stay there, but is a lot more agility drills, I would guess, than just as you said, bulking up.
100%. And another thing to add on to that is the difference between, since this is my 4th year, the difference between these upcoming months for me, the in-season working out versus what I was just doing in the past 4 months I was here before I came home for break is so different, especially for a high minute player, like for all the people that are going to be going in during the games. What they're doing in the weight room is a lot more focused on being able to stay agile, being able to be mobile, not putting too much stress on yourself, because let's say we have a lift on a Wednesday and our game's on Saturday, and then you go incredibly hard on your lower body. That's going to stay with you for like 2 days, and then you're going to look at yourself and you're going to be sore before Saturday. So, but versus what somebody, let's say a freshman who just comes in, maybe he's redshirting or he's the 4th or 5th guy on the depth chart, he's still going to be adding a lot into his body and doing all those harder workouts.
Do the coaches generally, not goalie, but the other positions, do they want people to bulk up, or is it every body type's different?
Yeah, they want people to bulk up, but they don't want it to be at the point where you're jeopardizing your speed. There have been people here. One person came into my mind 2 years ago. He was a great player. And he came in and he was a very good defensive midfielder. And he was himself, as well as the coaches, he was kind of skinny. He was so worried about his strength that he bulked up very fast. And he got to the point where all of his skill at being a defensive midfielder was lost because it was so much of it was his speed and being able to laterally move with the people dodging him. So his just ability went out the wayside. So I think it is about bulking, but it's a moderation too.
Okay.
So hey, let me ask you one other thing about that. And I guess in that Notre Dame football game over the weekend, they were talking about how once a week they do a mental workout and just kind of check in. As a goalie, what do you do mentally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked about
great question.
I get asked about the mental side of not only college sports but my position too. There needs to be a time, especially if you're a goalie and you're coming up and you're about to, let's say you have a big game coming up that weekend. You need to dedicate an amount of time on anything but lacrosse. If you're go for 5 straight days, worried about, what their best players' shooting tendencies are, what specifically I need to be focused on with what the other team does when they're riding our clear, you're going to be drained by the time the game comes. And so that's just a lot of that is what I do to avoid that is when I'm outside of my stretching or my practices, or let's say I'm in class or I'm just eating dinner with my roommates, we don't talk about lacrosse at all. And I think that's just been such a great thing for not only me, but I'm sure all of my other teammates, was those moments where you can realize you're still, however, you're 20, 21 years old, you got class, you got all these things going on, and it's not the end all be all is how well you're going to play on the time those games come by.
Right.
Do you have any mental tricks, say during the big moments, whether it's, the Final Four or whatever, to keep some of the distractions out of your head?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and I mean, I wish I wish he wasn't gonna find this out, but it helps a lot looking up at, my dad when he's at the games, because I know he won't care, what happens by the end of it. And so let's say, let me think, when we played Princeton my sophomore year, we were losing 7-1 going into halftime, and I was playing fine. I'm definitely not up to my ability, and everybody always goes in at halftime, but I don't do it. I don't like to, I don't want to hear things that aren't adding to what it is I'm doing in terms of goalie. So I don't go in with the team. I stay out there and I get ready to get shot on in between. So he always sits in the same spot with these two of his three of his friends, and he always looks at me and it's funny. He's like, it's okay, it's all right. And I'm like, all right, it's fine, so that always kind of flushes the bad thoughts. Be a goldfish, as a lot of people say, 30-second memories, especially for goalies, a great thing.
So do you meditate out there or anything like that?
Meditate, yeah, I guess that's the word you could call it. I definitely take a lot of time. I close my eyes a lot, especially when the ball's on the other side of the field, and I just try to focusing on your breathing is very important, because if you get too hyped up, there's this thing Coach Tamburano and I were talking about actually before I left for break, and it's about knowing when to be hyper focused and just normally focused. Like when the ball's on the other side of the field, I shouldn't be wired in, ready for a shot to come at me, because by the time the third quarter comes, I'm going to be incredibly drained. So being able to stay focused when the ball's coming at me is a different kind of focus than what you should be having, when you're not under the pressure.
It's almost like being a surgeon.
I couldn't speak on that.
It's not. I asked Klepper and he said it's not.
So how about I think that focus thing is super interesting, that you can't keep your intensity 24/7, so you save it for the big moments. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's like sorry, go ahead.
So how do you deal with stress just in the balance between, say, academics, lacrosse, life, that kind of thing?
It definitely helps having 50 other people doing the same thing you're doing. There's been so many times, one of my best friends, even my roommate Mac, he went to Bullets. Him and I, we have a lot of the same classes, and our schedules are really similar, so our downtime will be the same. And there'll be just times we'll just be sitting there, but damn, it's been 4 days. We've been up at 6 every morning, and then we haven't gotten home since 7. This is tough, and it's really tough. But that's why only 50 of us are doing it. Yeah. So that helps a lot going through it with them. But just having the support staff too. We have a ton of people. We have a ton of resources athletes do versus, regular students that they don't have. We have academic advisors. We have tutors. I have a trainer who helps me keep my body right. We have a nutritionist. So there's 2 ways you can really look at it.
Do you ever when you look at like friends of yours that say that aren't lacrosse players, aren't D1, like let's say they go to big SEC schools, like, I don't know, somewhere in Arkansas or I don't know, down in Louisiana. And do you look at them and are you just like, what went wrong with you guys? Like, or are where did I fail with you guys? Or are you kind of like, I kind of like what they've got going on. They don't have the 6 a.m. wake ups, not coming home at 7, where they're going out at 7 and coming home at 6.
Yeah, not at all.
Or neither.
I don't see that as a thing where it's like there have been so many times where I've been here and I've been like, damn, that looks like a lot of fun. Like that looks awesome. And also I think it's a good thing that I have this kind of structure. I don't think I would be like, because I know Roddy takes care. Like Roddy was just in Alaska, and he does all these things like outside of, his life down there, and he has so much like good things going on, with his training. He works out all the time, and like I feel like if I were to be in that scenario, I would need somebody like Roddy with me to, pull me along for those things, rather than, here I got all these people doing it.
So Matt, this has nothing to do with anything. I gotta tell you, a 16-year-old Jack story was we were on the camping trip when they were at their camp in our neighborhood, and it was up at Deep Creek Lake.
Right.
Literally, we're in the woods, but there are probably $500,000, $1 million homes within a quarter mile of where we're camping. And Roddy and Jack are sharing a tent, and I'm like one of the supervisors for this camping trip. And before Jack goes to bed at night, he goes, "Hey, Dr. House," he goes, "Does Roddy know what he's doing? Like if a bear or something comes, because me and Franco, we don't camp." He goes, "I'll be all right, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, Roddy will wrestle a bear for you."
See, that's the friend you want.
Yeah.
I don't have that. That was just why I don't camp. Yeah. That's
I was
awesome.
incredibly comfortable in that tent, knowing Roddy had my.
So we've also mentioned Bullis a couple times, and I don't know if Jack knows that Matt Waldron went to a school that's famous for lacrosse, the Loyola Dons, but also they're famous for some of the funniest people that I know.
How's that?
There's just everybody I know for Loyola is funny. There's Matt Waldron, a guy named Matt Lewandowski.
I'm not picking up on that right
Dan
now.
Baird. Dan Baird went there, and they also have a great lacrosse team.
Jubber?
Yeah, that they do.
The Jubber? Yeah, you know the Jubber. Yeah.
We're going to have to spend some more time together, Matt, because right now I don't think you're all that funny.
Jack, I'm going to work you out real quick, and you're going to get on board real fast.
So, Jack, I do
stretching.
have so we mentioned the SEC guys. I wonder about the guys on your team who are putting in a ton of work. They're getting up at 6 a.m. to work out, who don't play. Like, they don't get in. And I know that in a place like Penn State, an elite program, those guys are definitely good enough to play for other programs. And I know they're also super important for the team. So what are your thoughts as a captain, an All-American? What are your thoughts about those guys and how important they are?
Yeah. And it's also so tough, being for them not being able to, go in and, score the goal or make the big defensive stop, but they're putting in the same exact work that we are every single day. And it's honestly sad. And yes, they could, almost all of them could play at other programs. And, it's like, why wouldn't you go do that? And I just think that has all to do, well, two things. I think one, it has all to do with the culture that Coach Tambroni's built. He recruited, especially when he's going through recruiting, and obviously there'll be a few people who slip through the cracks like it is at any program, but he looks for guys that just, they care so much about making other people better and bringing other people along with them, that the glamour of being able to play isn't something that is totally compounding their mind. Like one of the questions he asked me is about why I was going there. And I just remember telling him that I wanted to be a part of something where they haven't won anything yet. Like he asked me why I didn't end up going to Maryland like a few years later. And he always has this story about building a house. You got the blue collar house that, people come in and they build stuff and you're adding a brick every day to that house. Or you have the white collar house where you can go in somewhere and it's nice and, but it wasn't built by you. It was built by people who laid foundation before you that you didn't even know. So I think that has something to do with it too, just the people you bring in. But another thing is, these guys that are playing on the, the scout team have just as much of a say with what we're doing on game day. If they decide they weren't feeling it that day, that's just one less rep that somebody else is going to be able to have going into the game, like one of the starters. I remember when we were playing Duke before the Final Four, my buddy, he plays now, actually, his name's Mike Ferrone. He was Brendan O'Neill for that whole week in practice, and he completely changed the way he played because he was a big lefty. So he changed the way he played to emulate how Brendan played, just for my benefit to see how, that those shots, like how I would be needing to prepare for those shots. And for that, I'm always going to be grateful for people like that and for Michael. And, those guys are just as much of an importance to the team, and they know that too.
Good. So it always interests me because you look at people, and sometimes, like, there was a kid in our neighborhood who probably 10, 15 years ago, he played for Cornell, and he had some injuries, and he graduated from Cornell, and he really didn't play at all his senior year. He didn't play at all his junior year. Not transferred. He did a post-grad year at Towson, was second team All-American, and then played in, back then, the MLL for a bunch of years. And you're like, sometimes it's just wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't want to leave your friend group, and you don't want to leave a program you really believe in, or a great academic institution. So those people seem like they're just as important.
100%. Yeah. And just Penn State as a whole, the academics along with it, and as long as we have a Teammate for Life network that all lacrosse players throughout the tenure of if you went to Penn State, you get put into this network. And I think almost every person I know that has graduated has gotten their job because of somebody who graduated from Penn State like 10 or 15 years ago. So you get paired with a mentor. Like my mentor, his name's Kevin Keenan. He was a goalie. Geez, I don't want to make him sound older than he is. I don't know. He was a goalie, I think like 2005 or something like that, or maybe 2000. He's been helping me throughout now I'm trying to find a job for when I graduate. He's been helping. He's been connecting me. He'll connect me to a guy. He'll connect me to another guy that'll set me up with an interview at some place. And it's just so funny to see that. And so I think that has another huge part of it.
So Jack, that's interesting that, that network is pretty special, and it's great to have that. But as you talk about the next chapter, obviously we're focused on this spring and everything. The next chapter, lacrosse is still going to be a part of your life, but you won't be able to dedicate the same amount of time and focus. Do you think about that now and how you prepare mentally for that next chapter?
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely a culture shocking moment. I only have one more go at this. And I remember I was talking to my girlfriend an hour or two ago, and I was saying how I remember being a freshman, and I thought that this felt like an eternity away, and now it's here. But yeah, I think that I'm gonna need some help along the way, and it'll definitely be different. And I'm hoping that I'll have some people here with me along doing it, and hopefully I'll be able to keep playing if I get drafted, and then I'll be able to dedicate, because that's not all that time consuming, the PLL. Like obviously I'm gonna have to take time out to do stuff on my own, but I think it's only like 3 or 4 days out of the week in the summer. So hopefully if I do end up working somewhere, that won't be a problem, being able to commute for that. And yeah, no, it's going to be exciting, but I've been, doing the same thing for so long. I should be due for a little challenge, right?
Yeah,
So.
switch it up. And that's good.
So one of the side projects of House Calls is trying to get people to be healthy throughout their life, using sports sometimes to be healthy. Do you have any plans? Like, are you going to be one of those athletes who stays healthy for their whole life? Or are you going to be one of those guys who just is fat at the end of the bar saying, oh, I used to be the man back in the day?
Yeah,
you thought about that?
I definitely, because now the seniors that when I was a freshman are turning into that guy. It's definitely something. That I've put some thought into, and I'm definitely hoping to maintain. When you put so much time into something like this, I've been playing lacrosse since I was in, I don't know, like second grade, or maybe probably before that. When you put so much time into something, it would almost be remiss to just immediately hang up all the habits that you've built the second that nobody's watching. So I can't say, no, I'm not going to, but I'm very, very hopeful, and I'm sure that I won't become the fat guy at the end of the bar, Dr. Al.
But both your parents have work out also. So
yeah,
seeing people in middle age.
But yeah, especially with what you've been doing since, how long ago did you start this? Like,
I started working out last year, I think.
I started the website about a year ago, and I started the challenges, the sprinting challenge, the walking challenge, the push-up challenge. Started that last summer.
Yeah. So you've not only been taking care of yourself, and I know your close friends have been doing the same thing, but you've brought along an entire community of people to connect in a way that they haven't done before. And honestly, that's very cool to see. So hopefully I'll be able to, by the time I'm, my late 30s or 40s, have a community like that to, be able to keep each other accountable.
But don't you think that's a lot you learn from your team? I guess like the new phrase is it's not peer pressure, but it's like peer support.
But yeah.
And how valuable that is to kind of get to that next level.
Yeah, you have to be a very strong-willed person to be able to do what you're doing every day with no hesitation, with no, I'm going to sleep in this one time, or I'm going to have a few more drinks at the bar. Like, I think having people alongside you doing all these things, your potential is just unlimited when it comes to that.
You thought it all, and you probably haven't thought it all, but you have always been with a team for as long as you can remember. And when you get out in the work world, you might reach a level where there isn't a team. Maybe it's 2 or 3 people, or maybe you're the head honcho and you're alone. Have you thought about that? Like, missing that team atmosphere?
Yeah, well, now that you say it, I haven't thought about it all that much. I'm aware that is going to happen sooner than I would like it to. But yeah, I
don't mean to depress you.
No, no. It's a good question.
This is to be working by yourself in your basement. Good luck to you, Pat. Next thing you know, you're going to be on podcasts with a couple of old guys who don't know how to work computers. It's not that glamorous.
I was talking to TJ, and he was saying how he called me over the break about some miscellaneous thing, and he told me how different, the professional lacrosse locker room is compared to the college one, and how they're all friends. But this experience that I've gotten and the experience team sports has given me throughout my entire life not only shaped me to who I am, but it just it shaped the values that, you're going to have as a person. And, I think that will stay with me even when I'm with those 2 or 3 people, or if I find myself alone or in a friend group, or even, if I have a family in the future, though that'll never go away. But the fact that I won't be in that environment is definitely a scary thing. So thanks for bringing it up. But
yeah, you're going from a team of 50 to a team of Roddy and Carlos. Not the same.
So any thoughts? What have you learned about leadership? How's it progressed from high school to freshman? Because when you are the goalie, you are somewhat forced into leadership as you got to be a senior.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And being a captain now is unbelievably. First of all, it's an honor, but you never really think about it until it happens. What that's going to be like. But I remember in high school, being a leader wasn't so much. There weren't these heartbreaking moments, of turmoil and hardships. Like, you're just there. You might lose a big game, and then it's like, pat your teammate on the ass. It's okay. You're off with it. Like, going into college, I remember we lost to Hopkins. We weren't a very good team my freshman year, and we lost to Hopkins. And I looked around, and his name was Brian Townsend. He was our captain. He went to Gonzaga, and he was crying. And I was like, it kind of hit me that was his last time playing lacrosse ever. And things like that really just sink into your core. Who you are as a person, who you're going to become as a leader. And ever since then, I became a starter the year after that. And, I think leading by example is an important thing. It's hard to ask people to do something if you're not going to do it yourself, and you're not going to do it to your best of your ability. So I never have asked somebody to do something that I never saw myself doing. I'm not going to tell somebody to go out of their way, or I'm not going to tell you to go pick up balls if I wasn't gonna already holding the other bag with me, But yeah, I just think going through those experiences have a huge thing to do with leadership.
So are you more of a Ray Lewis leader, or more of a quiet leader, like you probably don't know him, Johnny Unitas leader, which would be like a Joe Flacco leader?
Yeah, I'm definitely. So my counterparts in the captain room, their names are Kevin Parnham and Matt Trainer. Kevin is most definitely Ray Lewis, and I'm glad he's a defenseman, so that takes the load off my shoulders, on the field, because he's always down there with me. And Matt's a good mix, but I would definitely say I like to lead more on the field. I don't really get colorful unless we're like in the middle of the game, or something really needs to be changed. Let's say we're losing a game and somebody did something, or I'm doing something. That's when my Ray Lewis will come out. But Kevin's like that all the time. So I think you can't have three Ray Lewises. So, that's a good thing.
Did they do the dance?
No, no. Well, he does some dance. Definitely not that dance.
So any like mentors that stick out kind of lacrosse wise throughout your
Thank you for a
career?
compliment. You know that, Jack, right? Don't give it to him.
No. I want to know lacrosse, and then I'm going to follow that up with more personal life mentors.
I know you know him. Francis McAndrews was far and wide. He's the person who put the goalie stick in my hands in the 4th grade. I was a midfielder before that, and our goalie had a swim meet, and he coached my brother Michael, who was a goalie, and I guess that automatically meant I would be good at it or something. So he gave me the stick, and then I became a goalie, and I never looked back. But he would take me out to Rolling Knolls with his sons on off day, like days we wouldn't have practice, and he would go through it because he was an All-American at Salisbury, so he loved playing lacrosse, and he would shoot on me. I did that countless amounts of times, and then just throughout high school and college, he's always been in contact with me. So I think in terms of mentorship, he was the best one I could have gotten.
That's cool that you guys stay in touch still.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and his son Jameson, his youngest son's playing high school lacrosse right now at St. Mary's. So
yeah, it's funny. I was coaching a team with Fran, so it was one of those things where Jameson was playing up. Roddy was on Jameson's team. You had moved up, so you were no longer on Roddy's team, and he was coaching 2 teams. So he was coaching Liam and Jameson, and he was talking about how he wanted to switch you to goalie, but Franco was a little bit hesitant because, and I think this is a serious subject, is that there's only one goalie. So
that's exactly why.
You could be the second best goalie in the country, but if the first best goalie in the country is on your team, you're not getting in. Same as like a quarterback or things like that. Whereas if you're a midfielder, there's plenty of positions they can get you on the field. Do you have any thoughts about that? Those positions where only one person really plays?
Yeah, I remember that conversation very well. Leaving, that was my second practice as a goalie, and I told my dad how much I wanted to do it, and he was concerned about what exactly you just said. The lack of ability that would leave me, or let's say the lack of mistakes that I would opportunities I'd be able to have because of that, because of the limited spaces. I guess I've never really thought of it like that, but I would say it's all about, confidence in yourself. If I never saw myself being able to dedicate the amount of time I did to it, because there's so many opportunities, just with social life and, vacations that I missed because I saw myself doing this thing that, not a lot of people could do or had the chance to do. If you could see yourself doing something like that, then by all means go for it. Somebody's got to play quarterback, right? Somebody's got to be the goalie. And if you see yourself, being able to handle the critiques and, sometimes handle misfortune. I didn't make the A team at Severn in 7th grade, but I thought I was the man. That was tough for me. Things like that. If you think you're mentally strong enough to handle that, then I'd say go for it.
Yeah. Do you enjoy playing the other positions when you play like a pickup game or something? I know you snuck in under or disguised in one of Roddy's summer league games and put up 5 goals.
I was just coaching. It's called Goalie Smith.
That was a couple of years ago. So your coach, if your coach listens, you don't get in trouble.
I was coaching Goalie Smith, which is my goalie training that I've been doing. Like these guys have been trainers for 9 years, and I was coaching the freshmen and sophomores in high school. And I was shooting during that, and I would score a goal, and I'd think, my God, how bad I wish I played attack sometimes. Being able to celebrate after scoring or make a nice pass. Yeah, I have a ton of fun playing attack and shooting. I'll go to the field sometimes, with a short stick, and Riley will come with me, and we'll just go shoot around. I think that's just also a beautiful thing about the game of lacrosse, because if you play one, it's not tough to, play all of them.
So any other mentors as you went up?
Beside my family, obviously my mom and my sister were always there for me on the outside of the game of lacrosse. They were always a great thing to take my mind off of it and, remind me that there's way more important things than this game that I play. And on the other side of it, my brother and my dad, I'm not going to talk about how great my dad is. I'm not going to fill his head up with all that right now.
Or remember, he had his own podcast.
Yeah, he got to talk about himself.
This is a 2-part podcast, but I definitely, I definitely propped him up in that podcast.
Yeah, he got to talk about himself for 45 minutes. But yeah, he's my best friend, and sorry, Roddy, but he's my best friend, and so he's been with me, when I've been playing terrible, and he's also been able to, I've been able to get away from the game with him, we're just hanging out, and he's taught me a ton about, brotherhood and friendship. So that has been incredible for my life. And my brother, just he when I started playing goalie, the things he would do for me and how he would go out of his way to, because he was a goalie, as I said, he would try to get the best out of me in that sense. And he taught me so many intricate things about the game of goalie. And he is also so big on the mental side of playing goalie that he always checks in on how I'm doing, to make sure I'm not getting too overwhelmed, because it is an overwhelming thing, college sports. So he always keeps me down to earth in that sense, which I'm eternally grateful for.
It's a good mix, inside.
Yeah, you got to have both.
Yeah, it's like you said, that's important to have.
Do you remember when you were young on some of the rec teams that Fran taught, and when it was championship games, your mom would bring out the noisemakers for every game?
How can you forget something?
And your dad was always the team dad was always filming the game. It was always funny because the parents were always so close, the kids were buddies. It was a fun time. So any thoughts on lacrosse burnout, especially kind of at the club level for some kids? What are tips to avoid it? What did you do? Did you ever get burned out?
Yeah, just by, too much lacrosse. Is that what you're saying?
Just as too much lacrosse or too much any sport. Like, just people in your life who played other sports, maybe.
Yeah. Moderation. If I had to play goalie for every day of the year, I don't think anybody would be able to play their sport for every day of the year. It's so mentally draining. It's sometimes, like, especially in this off season. This is my fourth time around, and then there'll be times where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just got home at 8:30 and I have to wake up for 6 a.m. practice. It's tough, but I think this goes back to what I was just saying. Having these moments where you're not just sitting in bed and you're not just, wasting the time away when you're not playing. Being able to put your mind onto something that isn't sport related, or if it's sport related, it's leisurely, with your friends. Like, that's why we always go play basketball all the time. And that takes a lot out of, lacrosse for me. And that's really nice. Being able to occupy your mind with stuff that isn't the sport you're playing, I think, is what avoids burnout, especially for a college athlete.
What advice do you have for like younger players who are thinking about whether they want to maybe commit to that club that takes a little bit more time versus maybe staying with their friends, or that person who wants to kind of is thinking, do I want to commit to a lacrosse program in college?
What I would say, what I wish I heard more of when I was going through this process was to not be afraid to make mistakes, because I was especially when I first got to Bliss, I was so nervous about my first impressions there, my first times playing, that honestly took the enjoyment out of it for me, being an hour away from somewhere and then playing and then being so worried about how I was going to do. But not only did it take the enjoyment out, it completely affected the way I was playing. I was so tense. And until I started to, like I was saying earlier, look up at my dad and like kind of forget about the things like that. I just think that, especially in sports, people are so hard on themselves, but you can't be afraid to make mistakes, because not only do mistakes help you grow as a person, but it makes you grow as a player too. So I think be ready.
You should get that love back, that confidence back when went to a freshman in high school that is an hour away from where you live. First time playing with some of these guys. How did you get that back?
I just thought back to all those times, at AYLA, and, I would look back at old film that my dad would take, and I would see, I have this picture that I think my dad showed in his podcast with you, of all of us like hugging each other after an AYLA game, things like that. I just think you need to remember, there's something I always say to myself is, just because you're not playing well doesn't mean you forgot how to do it. Especially as a goalie, I'll go through slumps all the time. Just because I lost, or just because I was playing poorly, doesn't mean I lost the capability to do it. So I think that's just huge when you find it again and falling in love with the rhythm and the grind of getting that love back for it is just it's awesome. So
That's cool.
When you're in the zone, when you're having a great game, is there any part of you who's like, all right, defense, shut him down, no shots? Or is there a part of you that's like, let him shoot. I want to start the fast break. Like, you get in that zone sometimes.
yes and no. I'll say that there'll be times where I think I like to call it like the flow state, where I feel like no matter what they'll shoot, I'm gonna save it. And like it'll happen a lot. Like if I make a save, it'll be a rebound, and then they'll pick it up and then shoot it again. Like it's just like you enter this mind, and it's this state of mind where you're just like you're unstoppable. But there will be times where I'm still playing good, but there'll be a situation where I know that if these two certain things happen, if he passes to this guy and then he picks around them or something like that, that they're going to get a great opportunity where I'm going to need to rely on my teammates. So I don't think, especially with goalie, I don't think that there will ever be a situation where I'm like, all right, let them shoot, because I need them too. I need the defense just as much as they need me. So
It's funny as a fan, and I told this to your dad, when you were a freshman and you were first getting in games, I didn't know any other players on Penn State's team because I hadn't watched them for several years. And I was basically cheering for the other team to shoot the ball so that you could stop it and have a great game. And it's such an odd way to watch lacrosse.
I bet.
Now that I
bet
want
it
the
is.
team to do well in advance, I watch it normally where I want the defense to stop them and I want them to get the ball at the field. But that first season was so weird because I was like, all right, let them shoot 100 times. And
Yeah.
hopefully you stop 90 of them.
Yeah, that was a weird season, man. But it's a part of me now, and it's part of my life. If it didn't happen, where who knows where I'd be right now.
Do you guys watch a lot of your own film, or do you mostly watch the teams you're going to play?
I'd say it's a good mix. I don't like to watch my own film that much, because then I feel like I start to overanalyze, what it is I'm doing. Because a lot of times you need to understand that you're going to get scored on, and they have just as much to say about it as I do. And sometimes they just make an amazing shot. And then I remember when I was in high school and I started watching my own film, I would be like, all right, I'm not stepping at the angle degree that I want to be, to beat the ball to its apex or some dumb stuff like that. And then I just started playing worse, and I'd start compounding. But I started rambling there. For a defenseman and like an attackman, we watch just as much about what it is the other team's doing as it is for us to, like let's say for an offensive player, we need to see what's going wrong with this play that we've put in. And like, all right, this guy isn't popping out fast enough. So we'll see that on the film. But then we'll see like, what is this team doing to slide and how can we counteract that? So I would say it's about 50-50.
What is this is just coming to me, but what's the jump in velocity and placement, say from high school to college, all the way to like you played against some PLL guys. So is it a huge jump? Like
Yeah, it definitely is. I
you
remember
got a tryout this summer, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention that, but was it a huge jump from say a Penn State practice to that tryout?
Yeah, it really is. So I would say from high school to college, the speed and the placement is just it's far and beyond it. You'll see so many high school goalies that do so well and it doesn't correlate to college, and it's because they could get away with a lot of those, like the poor placement. Like it would look like they're obviously making a save, and making a save is hard to do. But once you get to college, the room for error is so much smaller because they're just so much better at shooting. So that was definitely a big jump. College to these professional players is not only is the placement and shooting more accurate, the speed just kind of ramps up by like 10 miles per hour. And they know where I'm trying to give them. Like I'll be baiting certain shots that I want to see, and they'll know that I'm trying to do that and then put it exactly where I'm like gonna leave. So it's not only is it just a speed and strength thing, but it's so much of a mental thing between a shooter and a goalie. And then as they get older, they start to realize that too. So, yeah.
So during your lacrosse career, we've gone over it all. We've gone over mentors, what you've learned about leadership, what you've learned about how to take care of your body, what you learned mentally about stress reduction. Do you have any thoughts? This is an area of interest of mine, and it's something I've talked to Matt about. any thoughts on how kids who aren't athletes can get some of these lessons? Like, how do we recreate some of these lessons for your average college student? And I first started talking to Matt about this is because we know some people, including his niece, who go to a military academy. It's like they get all these amazing lessons. You as a D1 athlete or any college athletes get a ton of these lessons. How can you reproduce these? Both you guys can answer this question because that's a big question.
Yeah, I don't want to jump right into an answer because I kind of got to think about that.
I think it's all about the experience. And to me, what you're talking about is everything Jack's already mentioned. It's having that community, right, that around you that, you guys are all have the same goals, like these challenges that you do. It's because of the community. Like, you're going to do the sprints, you're going to do the push-ups because your friends in your community are doing it well and you want to be a part of that. That's how a non-D1 athlete kind of looks at things.
Yeah, I think what you've done with not only the website but with the Instagram, it's kind of hard to, it's hard to give an experience to somebody unless you've done it yourself. But I think this is the closest thing that they would get to that, with these podcasts and these challenges.
So to close it out, I'm going to say, remember, you'll always have a team back here. And you will always have a lacrosse team because you will probably be the goalie for the married team until you're like 80 or 85.
I hope I still got it by then.
So I think I told you this, but my uncle, who's 82, is training for the game this year.
Oh, yeah?
And,
you did tell me that. That's right.
He's a crease attackman, so all he needs is the ball in his stick. He needs somebody to slide off the crease and put the ball on his stick.
All right, we're gonna have to inform the middies of that then, in our next practice.
Well, he's requesting that Mac Ford come out of retirement, and Mac's probably 60 now, but he's probably still got it for that game.
I bet he does.
But this was super fun. Thanks for doing it.
Yes.
I had a great
thanks
time.
A lot.
Yeah.
Mac, do you have any last comments?
Yeah.
I do. Jack, don't be afraid to shave. Lean into the razor. It's okay. That stuff can come off. And
I've been a little busy, man.
All right. Fair enough. And I'm just saying that purely on jealousy. Pure jealousy. That's the only reason I say that. No, thanks. And I really appreciate you hopping on and spend some time with us. A couple of old guys. So thanks.
I loved it, man. Thank you for having me.
Good luck this season. And don't forget.
I won't. Gotta get that degree, man.
There you go. All right, buddy. Thanks,
See you
man.
later.
See you guys.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.
You too.